Good evening. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and thank you for joining me on this edition of Technology Access Television. Well, Chicago is all aglow. Everybody's talking about broadband in Chicago, and it's finally good news for all of the communities in Chicago to participate in this coming revolution. You know, there's so much good activity going on in the state, and we hear about fiber deployments and wireless deployments, but we were wondering, when was it going to come and include all of the city of Chicago? Yes, Chicago does have more fiber going through it than anywhere in the United States, but sometimes that fiber just passes you right by. Well, no longer. It's going to stop and start and expand from South Side to include all of the communities that could be possibly affected by the economic empowerment of leveraging broadband to make a difference in job creation and economic opportunity and equality in all of our communities. And my guests today are here to expound on these opportunities, encourage you to participate. Yes, the train has not left the station. As you know, here on Technology Access Television, we like to tell you about what's getting ready to happen so you can get on board and take advantage of these opportunities just like everybody else. My guests today are at the ground floor. In fact, they've been at the ground floor before there was a ground floor. They probably created the floor that the rest of us are going to step on because they never let the idea die. The community did not have a place at the table to discuss technology opportunities and technology strategies. My guests today are Laura Lane and Pierre Clark. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Bruce.
Now, at the start of this show, we had to figure out what titles were we going to use because you guys got some 15-word, 15-name acronyms, but that's a testament to this work that you guys have been doing, not this year, not last year, but for the few years that you've been at the table, really keeping community a part of this conversation. And I know you have to be happy with the results of the most recent experience of the governor coming to Woodlawn and saying it's time for broadband and fiber to be part of the conversation on the south side of Chicago.
Absolutely. It was an excellent day for community economic development because a long time has expanded before we understood how important that technology infrastructure was to all of our community economic development plans. And so to have DCEO and the governor understand that this part of the infrastructure is key to leveraging the community's vision was fantastic. And to have so many of those stakeholders who had been toiling in the vineyards for a long time, sending that message, but trying to make sure that the public resources and private resources partnered with the community. It was really good to see them all come together in one place.
Well, Pierre, you too, of course. We go back longer than we might want to care to talk about it because you've been on this show a number of times and a number of different hats wearing, different concepts. But I know this has to make you feel very pleased as well that you had no intention of letting this opportunity slip past the community, and you pulled the resource together, kept talking about it, even when people didn't believe that this was actually possible. You kept talking about it, kept organizing, kept really doing what an excellent community organizer does, organizing not only in Woodlawn and the South Side, but really all over the city. And tell us, in the time that we have, you've got this organization, CDAA. It's been organizing. What role did that organizing and outreach play in the culmination of this opportunity on the broadband project on the South Side?
Well, actually, I think that the CDAA was really the catalyst for us looking at the whole citywide picture of what we wanted to see happen in digital excellence, digital inclusion, and neighborhood technology access. And I think we recognized that Woodlawn was the locus of everything, that it had all the things that we thought a neighborhood could have to really bring something together. And of course it had visionary leadership in Bishop Brazier, first of all. And I always tell people, that guy impressed me. He was a genius of organizing, but he also was a genius of keeping us all at the table. And so he allowed us to grow our vision. He allowed Laura Lane to come to him and say, let's do technology, let's have a committee, let's work. So he allowed that to flourish, and so we had a nurturing environment of leadership that allowed us to move forward and to bring the various stakeholders and elements together into a package that I think culminated in the governor's, decision to say Woodlawn was the place that we want to start, and the South Side is the place that we want to continue. And so I think it was all that. So the CDA's role is always as a catalyst, always as, this is what we think should happen. We want to keep communities in the forefront. This is how we work. We don't give that up. And so I think it worked in this case. But you have to recognize that there was visionary leadership that allowed that to flourish, and that is the key anytime you have this kind of result.
Now, when the governor comes to the table with a $2 million check and says, University of Chicago, private contractors, you need to come to the table and really make a big project happen. And all of a sudden, a whole lot of people pay a lot of attention. But then the community wonders, when you're talking about money like that, isn't the community a challenge to stay at the table? And I think you have a real message there, because you've not waited for anybody to say it's okay to do anything. You've taken this message directly to the community and let them know now's the time the community has to step up. So for people that are concerned that this train is going to rocket away and all kinds of people are going to do things, what would you tell them about the opportunity for regular people in the community to be a part of what the successful application of broadband looks like on the South Side of Chicago and then stemming out from there? Well,
the key is that the community is the customer. So this project cannot happen without the voices of the customer stepping up. And so as long as we keep in mind that our asset is the people in the community, then we have an eye on who the real customer and the boss is, then I think we can all keep focus. Fortunately, also from the governor's position and also from the advocacy position of Broadband Illinois, promoting broadband throughout the state, we have advocates at different levels of government helping to keep the message that the community needs to stay at the table. So I think it's incumbent upon us and the local partners to keep a public process going, to make sure that we are educating each other about what impact broadband can have on the communities, how we can organize effectively to take advantage of high-speed broadband, what it means for our healthcare sector, our education sector, community development, and very importantly, public safety. People don't realize how much of a role broadband can play in improving public safety. So I think as we took a look at that opportunity, we said, hey, we have a lot of folks who are expert in community development. We have some technologists who are expert in the technology. Let's bring these folks together so that we can develop some strong use cases that are actually going to work in our communities. And so bring those frontline experts to the table on both fronts and come up with some winning opportunities for the first rollout of this high-speed broadband, so that we can continue to educate the next cohort and the next cohort and the next cohort, and really make sure that we're looking towards transformational uses of technology that are going to help our children, our seniors, improve health outcomes, et cetera.
Well, Pierre, from a technology standpoint, when you talk about gigabit speed networks, you're talking about the highest performing networks that are available anywhere. The kind of networks that have only been available at the research labs or the big research universities. But now we're actually talking about bringing that kind of speed to community-based organizations, nonprofit, anchor institutions that we identify. The kinds of opportunities and the way that can be used has never been seen before. So we
in the United States, though, it hasn't.
Right. So we really will be having an opportunity to write the playbook on what those applications are that really leverage that kind of asset. I know you've worked on not just technology aspects, but as Laura said, you guys have looked at the Promised Neighborhood, you've looked at education initiatives systemically, and to your credit, you've organized thought groups around each of those areas.
Yes.
And so that means that you laid the foundation for that dialogue to continue, not about feeds or speeds, but how it could leverage what the goals and objectives are, like you say, from a quality of life perspective and healthcare perspective. So as this announcement has been made and this planning process moves forward, what are some of the steps you're going to take to kind of frame, again, the conversation around applying that kind of understanding to the asset of a gigabit speed network?
And first of all, of course, you have to have an economic development framework. I think Laura spoke earlier that this was a win for community development. It wasn't just a win for technology. Technology without the uses, without the case histories of doing something with this speed don't mean anything. And so I think the brilliance of the Woodlawn and the Southside piece is that we've organized around community development, around education, around healthcare, around safety. And so we're looking to build a technology infrastructure that drives those particular community development pillars, as we call them, to in a way that builds community across the board. So it's not just about putting some assets in the ground. It's about leveraging and using those assets and the community being engaged in using those assets so that we build the kind of sustainable community that we want. And I think that's the brilliance of what's happened, and I think that's been recognized as that. So when we talk about the tech activists, they're always talking about computers and, hey, let's get this access. But it's about quality of life. And I really like what a friend of mine, Matt Guilford, said. It's about building the civic life of our community and our city. And so as we engage people in this process of transformation, it's about transforming the community with technology as the platform. And I think that's the key.
Well, you and I both know that there have been visionary leaders in our community on every front for a long time. In fact,
right.
The President of the United States came to this very community to learn the ins and outs of community organizing, because this is ground zero for the best practices of community organizing. I mean, Woodlawn, you look up community organizing in the book, it says Woodlawn, it says this is where Saul Alinsky and company were creating this craft. And so, and for people that might be watching this show, sometimes we that are so close to this, we live and breathe this every day. But Laura, why don't you let us know what the real collaborative looks like? In other words, so we know that the governor brought some money to the table, the $2 million. We know that there's a private contractor. We know under this Gig U thing, there was something that connected the university. But what does the real team concept look like moving forward? Who's at the table and who will have a chance to play a role in how this process spells out?
Sure. So Gigabit Squared is the private contractor who was awarded the $2 million to lead this build out in 9 Mid-South communities.
And what are those communities again?
Woodlawn, South Shore, Hyde Park, Kenwood, Oakland, Douglas, Grand Crossing, Grand Boulevard,
and Washington Park.
All
Very
9.
good.
There you go. And so the phase 1 is going to do anchor institutions in 4 core communities, but also include wire mesh in all 9. So there will be some gigabit level connectivity in all 9 in phase 1 of this development.
And will the community participate in, again, naming what those anchor institutions are, anchor institutions from the view of the community, ones that the community feels could be real catalysts for being connected as an anchor institution?
We're hoping that there's some flexibility in the process. We don't know what the final contract looks like between the state and Gigabit Squared, but we hope that they left enough wiggle room so that we can include some of those anchor institutions.
Exactly.
The standard ones are already included, like the hospitals and clinics, the schools, the libraries. So a lot of those key institutions are already included, but we all know that there are additional anchor institutions in the community, like churches, like our Y systems. And so I think we're going to have to make a particular case for what use cases could, benefit right now in year 1. And I think when we make those cases for sort of what could we do with this technology now, we'll make a good argument for, where we need to launch and what additional anchor institutions need to be put in.
We have so many phenomenal entities that we know about in the community.
Absolutely.
Places like ETA on South Chicago, Little Black Pearl.
Absolutely.
These are just institutions that they need to get a chance to be having first dibs on this gigabit speed, that they could turn around and apply it in ways that have never been seen before anywhere else. So I'm hoping that's a real opportunity. And Gig Squared, they had to come to the table with some resources too. This is not just about spending the state of Illinois, because the governor's not spending his money; he's spending all of our money.
Right,
That money is money that comes from taxpayers from the state of Illinois. So it's good to see this commitment made to the city of Chicago, and then I guess the university, they've got to put some resources on the table too.
Absolutely. They've agreed to do a grant of $1 million and to raise an additional $1 million to support this effort. So they're going to put some money on the table. The Woodlawn community has access to other choice neighborhood dollars and potentially some promised neighborhood dollars if we're successful with that to put on the table. So we're hoping that there are other types of costs that are going to come together. I know Alderman Cochran has pledged $1 million in TIF dollars.
Wow.
To this process.
Wow.
So I think one of the biggest opportunities right now for the community is to figure out what other assets we have to pledge to help branch out this strategy even further and reduce the cost. Because the whole concept behind the Gig U effort, where the 37 universities were trying to aggregate their buying power to figure out how to get gigabit speed at a more affordable price. And so that so Gigabit Squared came forth as that we can do it. We have a business model to do it. And this will be one of the first test case opportunities to see whether or not their business model of keeping low-cost gigabit connectivity really works and creates a digital ecosystem that works.
Well, I'm very pleased. I was at a program a week or two ago. In fact, I think you were there with Tony Preckwinkle, County Board President. And I was literally delighted. I mean, Tony's a real sharp cookie, so it's no question about it. But her real interest and thoughtfulness in this area, and she already identified that Washington Park, the Health Center, Providence Hospital, those are those institutions that will be some of the first to take advantage of that. Absolutely. So I'm delighted that her visionary leadership can be added to the ranks of people that are trying to figure out what to do about this. Now, of course, the other side, Pierre, comes into economic opportunity, as both of you have stated. Jobs. Who's going to install this network? Who's going to maintain this network? Who's going to write code for some of the applications that can be used across this network? The real opportunity is in apps and people saying, hey, if you had a gigabit, what would you do with it? So then places in our community that are high-tech lofts or accelerators, people in our community have ideas for mobile apps, for cloud solutions, for healthcare vertical type solutions, and oftentimes that conversation around technology entrepreneurship has not come this far into our community. Now it can. Yes. How do you see that creating a new window and a new thoughtfulness around the future of job creation, around innovation, around these kinds of apps, creating brand new companies? I mean, we could have a community Groupon in our neighborhood that could jump up and be employing 100, 200 people on the success of some of the applications that get written to take advantage of these networks.
Well, gigabit speed connectivity is going to draw a lot of attention and a lot of interest from developers and from business people, because that kind of speed is not available right now anywhere else. And so we're going to get an influx of that, first of all, people who want to start businesses, who want to do streaming media, telehealth, architecture, anything that requires a lot of speed and a lot of file transfer. We're going to get that. Secondly, we're going to do a training piece in Woodlawn that's going to spread to the south side, and we've already got that in play, where we're going to train people to be network installers and network engineers. Good. And our good friend down in Champaign, who is working down there to do that, is going to come up here and going to train people. So we're going to build a group of people who are going to know how to do this. It's not just going to be us as users. We're going to have businesses that are going to come to the table that are going to be able to offer services within this network. And we're going to try to be owners and create some service and sales and support of our own in this network. So that's all happening right now, okay? So don't get it twisted. This is not just about us being consumers. This is about us being users, about, innovators, owners, people who are actually involved in what this network can generate. So it's not just about sitting there, watching YouTube or watching Netflix. It's about creating those videos. It's about doing those things that are going to generate long-term wealth based on this network capability that we're bringing to this community.
I think this is phenomenal. And again, I was talking to Blair Levin after the announcement. Of course, Blair is one of the architects of the national broadband plan prior to taking on this assignment of Gigabit U. And he pulled my coat and he said, you know what? He said, today is the day it starts.
There it is.
That there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of meetings. When the governor came to the table with $2 million and the university put up one and committed to another one and GIG put up 5, now it starts. Because all the rest of these places have been talking about doing something. Right. So again, Hyde Park, Chicago, Woodlawn, the South Side finds itself in the center of what's going on. And this gives us a real chance to be at the people will be, again, just like when the president came here to learn about community organizing, people will be coming back to Woodlawn to learn about technology community organizing because of this gigabit network that started. Well, you guys have been working tirelessly, again, before the announcement, during the announcement, and after the announcement to really get the word out, and that's why I'm so delighted you took some time to come to the studio today. But what's your plan here for the next 30, 60, 90 days? How are you going to continue this effort of trying to get more people to recognize that they've got some skin in this game and they need to come to the table and be involved in this process?
Absolutely. Well, we're engaging Dr. Bishop Brazier because he helped to make sure we had choice dollars on the table, and the Brazier Foundation wants to help replicate what we're doing in Woodlawn and other Southside communities. So the Brazier Foundation will be a partner in this. And we have developed a technology advisory group that's taking a look at what the opportunities are on this wholesale backbone fiber that we're talking about and the business opportunities. And we're also in the formation of an access group that's going to take a look at what have been the barriers to adoption and digital divide in some of the test pilots we've had around in our community, and how can we improve upon and learn from those so that we can bridge that issue, because that's one of the biggest issues. When we build it, how do we get folks to use it?
That's right.
And that's definitely been your message. So those two working groups are already established. At our next couple of meetings of the Southside Broadband Expansion Collaborative, we hope to do some matchmaking between communities and technologists, and also between folks who have good ideas for applications and communities who are ready to run with them, where they have a nice dedicated population and they say, hey, if you're talking about testing in year 1, it already fits into our strategic mission, let's test this here. So we want to try to get some very, very strong use cases in each one of those pillar areas: education, healthcare, safety, economic development, and commerce. And so we are looking for those creative app developers and folks who have creative ideas but need someone to help them write the app, pair them up with technologists. So our next few meetings of the collaborative are going to be looking at doing some of that matchmaking and then figuring out what other sort of research and work groups we need to have, as well as engaging very thoughtfully with not only Gigabit Squared and the University of Chicago, but other institutions in the footprint, like the Illinois Institute of Technology, like the different hospitals that are there. How do we engage with them to make sure that they understand what this opportunity presents for them to contribute to the community, and how leveraging their investment now makes sense?
Well, Pierre and I were involved with the now president of DuSable Museum, Dr. Carol Adams. We had some little tech group that used to meet in the basement of Center for Inner City Studies talking about doing this and doing that. So I'm sure Dr. Adams will have some ideas about how DuSable Museum can be globified with this gigabit. I'm sure that's an anchor institution. That's another institution that we're delighted. So there's so many assets in Bronzeville, in Woodlawn, in the greater South Side, Washington Park. This is just going to be one of the real delights, and I'm hoping we're using this as a tool to get our young people to say, whoever says we're not the first in line to do some wonderful things, that now we're the first ones to figure out what to do with a gigabit speed in our community. Well, I want to thank Laura Lane for the great work that you've done for so many years, and Pierre, it's certainly nice to see the good guys win.
That's right, brother.
The good guys win. So it's all beginning. I always like to say, you hear about it while there's still an opportunity to be involved. So don't sit back and say, oh, those guys are dividing up the money. The money's already spent. Not this time. you have a chance to be involved in this program. If you want to find out anything about this, you can call me, you can call our Tech Access TV hotline, 312-725-8601. You can find everybody up here on this stage. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. We're not hiding from anybody because we've got a great story to tell, but it's not going to be the best story until you write one of those chapters. Hey, thank you so much for watching this edition. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this has been Technology Access Television.